Welcome back to Upside Down Data. We need to talk about XRP. So you may have seen that XRP has been rallying aggressively ever since election day. We are currently, as I record this, up over 100% in a very short amount of time. So what is going on? Why is XRP ripping this way, and could it continue? So first of all, if you're not familiar, XRP is an asset with a lot of history. It was put out by Ripple, which is a company here in the United States, and it was designed originally to provide a better way for banks to do international transfers. It was basically a financial institution type of application is what they were targeting. Now, one of the things that happened with XRP a while ago was that it got into legal trouble with the SEC. Basically, the SEC alleged it was a security. There was a very long and protracted legal battle around this. There was actually a favorable ruling by the courts in Ripple's favor in terms of XRP not being a security, although the SEC has been trying to appeal that. Now, what has changed is since the election, and it's no surprise or coincidence that from the election to now is when XRP has been rallying so aggressively, because it's possible with Trump winning that the leadership of the SEC is likely to be changing, and with that, it might be more favorable to XRP and to Ripple, and therefore you might actually expect XRP to be able to do better, not being held down by that regulatory pressure. So that's some of the background with XRP. Now, it is important to note, when we just look at the full-on price history of XRP, that it hasn't been the most fantastic asset ever since its first cycle. Now, in its first cycle, here in 2017, it was absolutely spectacular. If you just look at this run here from bottom to top, we're talking about a 61,000% move to the upside. Absolutely phenomenal. But after that, it's really struggled. Now, a lot of people would say this is all because of the SEC and the legal troubles that has been holding the price of XRP down. That's certainly possible. So with that removed, it is possible that things might start looking a little bit differently, or at least with the prospect of that being removed. But it is just important to keep everything in context. That XRP is one of the assets that has struggled ever since this first big explosive rally to really move beyond that. In fact, it has not set a new all-time high since back here in late 2017, early 2018. All right, so let's go ahead now and talk about what could be happening going forward. So there's a lot of narratives and speculation that we could talk about. I want to just look at the data, see what they're saying about the outlook of XRP going forward. So I'm going to start by talking about risk as it relates to XRP. So I'm going to talk about first our short-term upside downside potential indicators. So this is our short-term risk model that we have here on the channel and at our website, polaritydigital.io, link to that in the description. And so higher values mean higher risk, lower values mean lower risk. And this cares about moves that play out over days to weeks, so shorter in its time horizon. And you'll see that with XRP, basically the model respects the fact that XRP can have these really explosive moves to the upside. So that's why you'll tend to see the risk hanging out at these relatively lower levels, because it knows that there's a lot of upside potential that Ripple could potentially eat up like it has a few times in the past. So that's where if you see the risk on for this particular asset down in this range here between about -2, -3-ish, that's more about what you'd expect for XRP. It tends to hang out in these lower levels and have these very violent moves to the upside, really eating up a lot of that upside potential before reverting down to that level. So something to note going into this. Now, what we see right now is that short-term risk is moving up pretty aggressively. We're up at around neutral. But if this is the beginning of a full-on parabolic bull market or a big alt season, we might expect much more of this to be in play. Last cycle, we got up to about 3.34. In the cycle before that, when it put an all-time high, we got all the way to the top of the scale. So you might imagine that this rally, we'd be at least expecting somewhere in the 3 to 4 range as being that upper target. That if we tag that, that might be a bigger sign for concern, or at least a sign that some longer term consolidation might have to happen within the bull market before a final leg up, like what happened here in 2017, 2018. But certainly not extremely concerning yet. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see a local top forming here, maybe some consolidation before a next leg up could happen. We've seen these levels right around 0 act as resistance in the past in multiple rallies, even during bull markets. So I would not be surprised to see that happen here. But this isn't the case that we've gotten to these really extreme levels that have marked tops, or at least pretty notable local tops like we have in prior bull markets. I think there probably is more room for XRP to work in, if not now, in the not too distant future. And especially if we're going into a full-on alt season, I think XRP has more room to work with. And especially given the change in background dynamics with the regulatory pressures probably easing off and possible that the SEC might even drop their appeal with a new leadership under Trump, then we have to just keep in mind that these things can change dramatically. I would still expect kind of 3-4 to be the topping out point I'd expect. And again, we're nowhere near that yet. And this is even more clear if we look at the long-term risk with XRP. So similar idea, but this model cares about moves that play over months to multiple months, much longer in its time horizon. And so a similar thing, when you get to these really high levels, that means that you're getting to very high risk. At the very least, you're going to need some longer consolidation for a while before the next leg up, or you're going to be entering into a bear market like what happened over here and like what happened over here. And again, I would think that the same general range, somewhere between 3 and 4, is likely where we're targeting, or 3 to 5. Somewhere in that general ballpark is what we're targeting for this cycle if the alt season continues. But importantly, where we look at where XRP is right now, it's not even at neutral yet. It's down at negative 1.3. Now, like the short-term risk, long-term risk also hangs out at these lower levels and have these big spikes up for XRP, but we're still nowhere near overextended yet on the long-term risk. So that's where I think it has quite a bit more room to work with if it wants to in this cycle. What you might see is something like short-term risk shooting up. We have a consolidation, short-term risk cools off, long-term risk kind of hangs out at a lower level, but still elevated. And then it has another big move up where short-term risk maybe really elevates. And then that ultimately leads to longer-term risk getting higher up as well. You'll tend to see that happen. Short-term risk is more volatile. It reacts, as the name suggests, to shorter-term moves. Long-term risk is trying to really kind of map out a longer kind of smoothing out across all that short-term volatility. What is going on in the longer term? That's what it cares about. It's not going to be reactive to these really short-term moves. That's not what it's concerned about. Okay, so from a risk perspective, I think we have plenty more room to work this cycle. So unless we have some catastrophe that shuts down alt season before it can get started, something like a horrible recession or some other crazy events, I think we're going to see the entirety of the scale being in play, and we're nowhere near getting to the top of that right now. Now, something else that we can look at to tell us where we are in the market cycle is the forecast model for XRP. So that's what I'm showing you here, this blue line. So what this model is looking at is basically the probability of upside 6 months in the future. That's what it's talking about, is how likely are we to see upside over that next 6-month window. So it's a probability. So if you see 0.85, that would be an 85% chance of upside in 6 months. If you're all the way down at something like 0.19 or 0.15, that's like there's a 15% chance of upside basically in the next 6 months. And you see this model does a fantastic job of basically telling you when to be bullish on XRP and when to be bearish on XRP throughout its entire cycle. That in these lead ups to big bull runs, it gets very bullish. And then as the bull run is ending, it gets very bearish, basically telling you that the outlook looking forward 6 months is not looking nearly so good anymore. And the exact same thing happened this time around. You'll see that in this bear market, we got very bearish on the forecast model. And then as we went into this kind of consolidation and reaccumulation phase here, started getting quite bullish. And then now, as we're entering into alt season, it's starting to get more bearish again, like it does every single cycle. So this doesn't mean, with it getting more bearish here, that we're done, that it's over, that we can't have more upside. You'll see in the past, you'll see this model move down, and a lot of explosive upside can be remaining. It's just saying, be careful. We're getting towards the end. That as you start looking 6 months in the future, it's less clear that at that point you should remain bullish. That the outlook is great here, but as we go on a big parabolic move, it's going to get more and more concerned. And then ultimately, when it gets down to these really low levels, that's probably when it's going to be suggesting that the top might be in and that a bear market might be following. So seeing that start to happen isn't concerning, but it just means that you're on a short leash. You don't have years and years anymore like we did back here to be accumulating and not worrying about it because the bull run's coming. The bull run's happening, then you want to start getting more concerned in that longer term outlook. So that's what I'm really taking from this, is that XRP has a lot of room to work with. We see that with the risk models, but it's going to probably happen in a relatively short amount of time. If you get an alt season, it could be very much like something like 2020 into 2021, where if you look back over here, you know, in November of 2020, that's when we first got the big move of XRP last cycle, and then actually had a big crash before ultimately going all the way up. But something like this, where we have maybe a big move like we're seeing now in November, maybe some consolidation, let short-term risk cool off, and then ultimately a big run to whatever the cycle top would be. And that's when you might expect the forecast model to really get down into the dirt and just kind of all the way down here, suggesting the top is in, or like it did over here, kind of going up, consolidation, forecast model falling off as you had that big final explosive rally, and then into the bear market you go. So that's what I'm seeing here. It would not be surprising to me at all if the top comes in for XRP within the next 6 to certainly 12 months, and then the bear market to follow from that. That's what the data are suggesting looking at this, but it still means that that run has not fully happened yet. This is just the beginning, most likely, if we see that. So not financial advice, you should make your own opinions, but that's what I'm seeing with XRP right now. I think we're at that point where, the most golden window to be acquiring XRP was down here. Now we're probably in the middle of that big expansionary period. But then, like every other cycle, I expect similar dynamics to play out, where we might have a big run, maybe even break all-time highs this time, but then the bear market will follow. So it might be very violent, and certainly at the top, people won't want to believe that it's the top, but we'll be able to watch the data. That's the useful thing about having these models, is that they can tell us where we are in the cycle, and when risk is getting really elevated, where taking profits makes a lot of sense. So for final time, not financial advice. You should make your own decisions, make of these data as you will, but that's what I'm seeing when I look at XRP right now. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over at X. A lot of updates for our models and more over there. You can go to our website, claritydigital.io, to see live data for our models and more.